So let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've covered types of data. I'll be sharing these presentations with you by the end of the day, along with the practice files that we have discussed. Now, so we have covered the first question of the measure phase, which is what to measure. Okay. Now we are getting into the next question, which is how to measure. Because it is very, very important for us to look at that what sort of data we are going to analyze. Because sometimes we get a humongous sort of data and it is not really possible to work on the entire data. And therefore, we talk about sampling. And I'm sure you must have heard about sampling or sample size previously, but we will talk about in detail that what are the different types of sampling that we have, which sampling type is the most effective sort of sampling type, how do we get to the right sample size, and how do we do the sampling. So these all questions which are coming in your mind, that what is the use of sampling, what is the correct sample size, what is the technique to do the sampling. This is something which we will talk about next. Okay. So first talk about types of sampling. Okay. First type of sampling is called a random sampling. In random sampling, when we are doing sampling, we don't consider in such a way wherein we give any systematic or any sort of sampling. We pick any sort of number which comes our way. Okay, either it could be the first, third, fifth, seventh, whatever we want. So that's what we do it with the help of sampling. So first of all, even before we get into the types of sampling, I just want to ask you a question. That why do you think sampling is required? Why can't we work on the entire population or entire data set that we have?
Because
So,
collecting the data for the entire population can not necessarily be feasible.
economically, it cannot be feasible sometimes, and for
Okay.
various other operational reasons also. So it is
So,
always better to go for a sample.
so economically also it is not viable. It takes a lot of time as well. It's operationally not possible as well. Okay.
And also a sample of the data can be a representative of the entire population. So we
Yeah.
don't need to spend the effort to go through
Yeah.
the entire population.
Absolutely.
And
So
that is why sampling size is very, very important.
absolutely. So one very good thing that we talk about, or very effective thing that we talk about, is that sampling represents the entire population, and therefore sampling is a good method. So, for example, when we look at the uh, by elections, or when we look at the election polls that will come into place, wherein we know that we have a population of 1.3 billion. Okay, but these people comes up with the sampling and comes not exactly, but yes, to some extent, whether the sample and populations are very, very near to each other. Okay, so sampling is very, very effective. Why it is required is, and you all answered it, it's very, very, very time consuming and consume a lot of time. So just to make you understand, with one example that I want to take. So for example, if I'm trying to design a new shoe, and I want to know the taste of the people, to understand what is the look and feel of the shoe that they are looking at. So I designed a kind of a questionnaire, so that I can take person's opinion, and basis people opinion, I will be able to make that shoe. Okay. So now the population that I have, like if I take an example of one particular state, let's take an example of Maharashtra. Okay. We know the population is around 1.5 crores. So in 1.5 crores, if I want to check with each and everybody, it's going to take ages. It's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to take a lot of time and patience. And by the time if I complete the population, I might not require this. Okay, maybe then the demand changes and I don't want it. So that's why sampling is very much required. But we need to ensure that the mean of the sample should be very, very close to the population mean. Mean of the sample should be very, very close to the population mean. How close, that is something which we're going to talk about in the sampling exercise. Okay, so that is what sampling is. That's why sampling is required. Now we will talk about different types of sampling. So I was talking about random sampling. Random sampling in such a way that each and every sample in a given population has an equal chance of getting picked. Okay, no matter whether it is for one particular region, one particular product, one particular team, everything can be looked at. So that is called a random sampling. Some of the benefits of random sampling, it's very unbiased because we are not giving any sort of consideration to any group. It is a real representation of the population. It is very simple and economical, okay, but it is not very viable because it could be a possibility. Let's say if I'm doing a population, sorry, if I'm doing a sampling of one particular business unit and I want to come up to a sample, if I do a random sample, it could be possible that I consider the sampling of only one particular team or one particular shift, or maybe one particular product. You know, I have not taken others into consideration. So that's why random sampling is not very, very effective when we have huge data stratification, a lot of different types of data that we have, different data points that we have. So therefore, in that particular case, we will not consider the random sampling, because in that case, we have just randomized it, but not considered that we have taken people or sample from each and every department, units, products, geographical regions, shifts, etc. etc. Okay. Second type of sampling is known as systematic sampling. In systematic sampling, it is often used as a when we giving any sort of sequence, okay, sequence to a sample. Like if I have a data in front of me and I have given a logic that I would pick every 10th data. So first I'll pick first, then I'll pick 11th, 21st, 31st, 42nd, etc. So I've given an n name selection technique. If I can give anything as per my convenience, but that is what systematic sampling is, wherein I'm giving a systematic sort of logic that I'll be doing this side of sampling. This type of sampling is not very effective as well, because I'm not considering each and every, again I said, the stratification that we have in the data. I'm just doing a systematic sampling. So this is something that we've already covered. The third type of sampling is a convenience sampling. What is convenience sampling? Convenience sampling is done when I am doing sampling as per my convenience. Okay. Sometimes, someday, if I say that I will do sample for this particular department, and someday I say I can take sampling from this particular. So it is my own convenience, as per my convenience, and I'm being biased sometimes also. That's why I'm doing the convenience sampling. Okay. This is also not very convenient in terms of coming up to a right sample size and right sample size. So therefore, convenience sampling is also not very effective to talk about.
Simarpreet, just one question. So this convenience sampling is a non-probability sampling now?
Yes. Convenience sampling is basically the sampling that I'm doing it as per my convenience. I do not look at any of the constraints. I don't look at any of the criteria. So today I think I should take 10 sample from this particular area and 20 from this particular area. So I'm not using any sort of logic, any sort of randomness, any sort of systematic. It is as per me only. Okay. And why I mentioned it in the slide, because there are some teams that who do the convenience sampling, and they should not do it. So that's what
Okay, got
we
it.
talked about. The most effective sort of sampling is known as quota sampling. However, there is another layer to it which we'll talk about. Quota sampling basically talks about we identify the stratums and their proportion which they are representing in the population, and basis that we do the quota sampling. So let's take an example here. I will just take an example of the quota sampling here.